He was a successful entrepreneur with a big heart.
He was just very business savvy.
He received an award for his services helping the community.
Everybody loved him. Everybody. He was just a spirit you wanted to be around.
And she seemed like the perfect match for his caring spirit.
She was a successful mental health counselor.
He found her unique, found her beautiful.
Their goals for the future were really aligned, and so there was so much more than just a physical connection there.
But a shocking disappearance tears this picture-perfect family apart.
I was calling my dad. The phone was going to voicemail. She's not answering either. None of the kids are answering. Could they have been kidnapped? Could they have been killed?
The search for answers reveals a gruesome discovery.
They lifted up the cover and just dropped it.
The television was on a true crime show at full volume, like a taunt to the police. It was scary.
He never saw this coming.
Or were the warning signs there all along?
I heard something about a divorce.
He was checked out. He was done.
It became very obvious through their communications that they were having an extramarital affair.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just something about her just wasn't right. She been a terror.
Hey, Mickey!
This was diabolical. This was premeditated.
I was just pissed. I was livid. I was angry. The situations that she put us in, just wicked.
March 19th, 2018. It's a sunny spring day in the laid-back Houston suburb of Spring, Texas.
Spring, Texas, that's where you go when you want to escape the city. It's a great place to raise a family.
It's about 30 miles north of Houston proper, and it has a lot of trees, so it gives like a rural vibe, like a suburb vibe.
And unlike its neighboring metropolitan areas, Spring is renowned for its low crime rates.
I would categorize Spring as a relatively safe area. It's very residential.
Spring is a quiet area. You don't hear a whole lot about crime.
But at 6 p.m., one family is beginning to panic.
51-year-old Mickey Willis's family hadn't heard from him in 10 days. He had missed some really important family events, and that just wasn't like him.
So Mickey's father, A.W. Willis, decides to check the rental home where Mickey lives.
The landlord actually went out there with A.W. to get him access to the house.
Thanks again for doing this.
Of course. I just hope he's okay.
But immediately upon opening the front door, it's clear something's wrong.
That's when they smell the foul odor.
You can't go in there. Something's wrong. I'm calling the police.
Yes.
Now, they were really faring the worst.
Police are at the scene within minutes.
So when police got in there, they don't see anything alarming. They don't see clothes thrown everywhere or any scene that would look like there was a disturbance. But what they did notice audibly was that they could hear the TV still playing. So they go up to the room, the bedroom where the TV was playing.
The smell got worse and worse as they made their way up to the bedroom.
The television was on a true crime show at full volume, like a taunt to the police. It was scary.
It looked like there was someone lying under the blanket on the bed.
Officers cautiously approach and are taken aback by what they discover.
They lifted up the cover and just dropped it.
They found Mickey lying on the bed, and he was in an advanced stage of decomposition, so he had been dead for quite a while.
He was literally decomposing and rotting and had flesh flies literally feeding on his body.
We need homicide immediately.
It was like something out of a horror movie. How did this happen to Mickey?
Eric Mickey Willis was known across Texas for his unmatched wit and humor.
My dad was very comical. He just was a jokester. He always laughed, smiled, found some kind of humor in any situation, basically.
He was an amazing father, even though the relationships with the mothers of his children did not work out.
Like, me and my dad, we were really tight. I would, talk to him all the time, call him on the phone all the time. Like, whenever I had something good going on, he was the first person I called.
Mickey was also known as a jack of all trades.
My dad has always been an entrepreneur. He was a hardworking man.
He dabbled in the music industry. He raced horses. As a matter of fact, he had 3 award-winning horses.
He was also a certified auto mechanic.
He loved cars. He liked fast cars. So I guess he just liked racing. I guess you can put it like that. Maybe he liked the fast life.
Mickey's most recent endeavor was opening his own demolition company.
His business was pretty successful because of the innovating ideas Mickey brought to the table.
He found a way to smash the trash where he would compact it even tighter to get more trash in one load because you got to pay to dump. He was just very business savvy.
But despite his dedication to the grind, Mickey always went the extra mile when it came to helping others.
He was selfless. He cared about other people. He would volunteer his company's services during Hurricane Harvey, and he always was assisting with the Houston Fire Department, so much so that he received an award from them for his services and how he was helping them and helping the community.
Everybody loved him. Everybody. He was just a spirit you wanted to be around.
So it was never difficult for Mickey to find a date.
He was definitely a ladies' man. He was very handsome, and the ladies were very attracted to him.
You see pictures of him like he was a smooth guy.
He created a lot of relationships with his charm. He had a few other women, but then the next one that we actually got to know and meet was Cynthia.
Hey, I'm Mickey. What's your name?
Cynthia.
Cynthia.
He was just really taken aback by her beauty when he met her. He found her unique, found her beautiful.
From the get-go, they both had something to relate to, and that was their desire for a big family.
Actually, I have 4 kids, all girls.
All girls?
Yep.
Whew.
Yeah, it's a trip, but they're amazing.
I would actually love to be a part of a big family like that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
They quickly found that their goals for the future were really aligned, and so there was so much more than just a physical connection there.
Before long, the couple decided to take the fast track to making their hopes and dreams a reality.
They ended up going to Vegas and eloping there. They didn't even tell us.
And back in Spring, Texas, their union continued to blossom.
Cynthia had a great job. She worked at a local behavioral therapy center.
She was a successful mental health counselor. Her income, combined with Mickey's demolition business, allowed them to live comfortably while continuing to build their family.
Together, they had 3 kids.
But now, Mickey has been found deceased in the couple's bedroom. And based on the state of decomposition, he's been there for quite some time.
At this point, the decomposition was at least 10 days. And this is a gruesome scene.
Detectives turn off the television, which has been eerily projecting a true crime series, and get to work examining Mickey's body.
Despite the advanced state of decomposition, investigators are able to determine how Mickey died. He was shot on the left side of his head behind his ear.
There was a spent casing from a 9mm weapon laying on the pillow next to him. It was fairly obvious that it was an execution-style shooting as he slept.
He never saw this coming.
As shocking as the discovery of Mickey's body is, there's an important question on everyone's mind. Where is Cynthia?
Still no sign of the wife.
After seeing Mickey's body, police are concerned about Cynthia and the children. The couple lived in the home with their 2 adult children and the youngest son who was about to graduate high school. Could they have been kidnapped? Could they have been killed?
Police could only hope there weren't going to be multiple victims in this crime.
51-year-old Eric Mickey Willis had a successful demolition business and a large, loving family, with his wife Cynthia by his side.
He was always laughing, joking around. He was just always happy.
However, the house that was once filled with love and laughter is now swarming with police.
Mickey had been fatally shot on the left side of his head, and his body was terribly decomposed.
But where is Mickey's wife, Cynthia?
Still no sign of the wife?
Put out an APB out on the car.
Yes, sir.
The couple lived in the home with their 2 adult children and the youngest son, who was about to graduate high school. Could they have been kidnapped? Could they have been killed?
Police only hope there aren't multiple victims in this crime.
When investigators check the doors and windows, they don't find any signs of forced entry.
We had ruled out any type of home invasion, any type of a planned hit from outside.
Whoever did this either had a key to the home or they were let in by somebody.
As investigators put out a bolo for Cynthia Willis and her car, the tragic news of Mickey's death spreads to the rest of the family.
I gotta tell you something.
I remember my grandfather called me to tell me that they found your dad in the house over there. And I just broke down. Toya called me and she said, they found a body in the house. And I just remember screaming. I just screamed. I just fell on the floor and I just kept screaming that, we waited too late. We waited too late to call and to check. If we would have pushed the issue a little bit further, could we have found him sooner? It was just so many questions. It was guilt. It was anger. It was a lot of emotions that we were all feeling.
Mr. Willis? I gotta call you back.
A.W. Willis is still reeling from his son's death, but he wants to help investigators in any way that he can.
So when was the last time you talked to him?
A.W. says no one in the family had heard from Mickey for 10 days.
Okay, and do they all live in Houston?
Yes.
My sister Erica, she was pregnant. She had my nephew March 12th, and I was calling my dad, and I was trying to tell him, Erica's in labor. The phone was going to voicemail. In my head, I thought, well, maybe him and the kids and Cynthia took a trip because it was spring break. So we said, okay, well, let's give it some time. We just kind of started making up things in our head to make us ease ourselves.
But the family's concern escalated the following Monday.
So Monday comes by, and that's when we find out that he didn't show up to work. So we're like, okay, that's kind of odd because he was very hardworking. Like, he worked around the clock. He wouldn't just abandon a job like that.
He had never not shown up for work. I mean, he was just a guy that was faithful to his work.
A.W. says the family's next step was to contact Cynthia.
I dialed the Cynthia number about 11 or 12 times right after another. Nothing but a voicemail.
He tried calling his grandchildren who still lived in the home, but they weren't answering either.
And I'm concerned about all of them, not just him, because I couldn't reach anybody.
A.W. says that's when the family decided to reach out to Mickey's landlord.
We reached out to the landlord and kind of insisted, like, hey, we want you to go out there, check, and open the house.
Detectives inquire about the relationship between Mickey and Cynthia.
Did he say anything was wrong?
Well, they've been having some domestic problems.
And according to A.W., Mickey seemed to be at the end of his rope.
That's what he told me. He wanted out. And I heard something about a divorce.
He was checked out. He was done.
Detectives in Spring, Texas, investigating the murder of 51-year-old Mickey Willis, are speaking with his devastated father, A.W.
According to Mickey's father, Mickey and his wife Cynthia had been going through a rough patch lately.
Well, they've been having some domestic problems. He put it out, and I heard something about a divorce.
My dad was checked out. He was done.
But did Mickey ever go through with the separation? A.W. doesn't have an answer to that question.
He wasn't sure if his son had filed for divorce, but he knew it had weighed on him heavily.
You know, people tell you things, you don't go off and tell everybody because you don't know the truth.
This was a 30-year relationship that was very rocky. They would fight quite frequently.
There were issues in Cynthia and Mickey's relationship for years.
You know what it was about?
And that's been for years, you know.
He said they was having problems, but he didn't tell you what kind of problems.
Well, some of the problems they had was so obvious, you know. You could see him being hurt, you know, hit, things of that nature.
Hit?
A.W. says the fights between Mickey and Cynthia sometimes escalated into physical violence.
He never did. He's been hit. Like
By
that,
her?
You know.
I've had it, Cynthia.
You don't think I've had it too?
I don't know if they reported it. He was trying to protect the girls, you know. He loved the girl that was his kid. He loved her.
And A.W. says shortly before Mickey went missing, he and his wife got a phone call from Cynthia that made them believe she was trying to mend her relationship with their son.
She called my wife, and she was saying, "But I'm gonna try to do better." And my wife said, "Well, we love you, but you need to try to give your husband respect." And
Cynthia said that she had done a lot of things wrong, but she was trying to do better. She was going to fix things, that she was going to make this marriage work.
But did their marital woes just drive them further and further apart?
Based on what investigators were hearing, they started to wonder if those marriage problems could have driven Cynthia to do something.
Maybe she wasn't another victim in this crime. Maybe she did this.
And I don't think he got the respect from the young lady, and they never has, in a sense.
But as police continue searching the entire Houston metropolitan area for Cynthia, detectives make a valuable discovery in Mickey's text messages.
As they go through those phone records, investigators see that Mickey has been communicating with a woman named Jackie Caldwell.
When detectives dig deeper, they uncover near constant communication between the two, starting in the weeks leading up to Mickey's murder.
Jackie was a childhood friend of Mickey. They grew up together and lost contact, but then reconnected.
It became very obvious through their communications that they were having an extramarital affair.
In the text messages, detectives can see that Mickey and Jackie had a date planned for the evening of March 9th.
So she's with him. They're spending time together the night before he gets murdered.
If Mickey was planning to patch things up with Cynthia, did he let Jackie know that night?
Did Mickey go meet with Jackie that night to break things off with her?
To get to the bottom of this, detectives call in Jackie for questioning.
All right, Ms. Caldwell, we need you to be honest with us.
This might be a classic case of a woman scorned.
Detectives investigating the murder of 51-year-old Mickey Willis have just brought his lover, Jackie Caldwell, in for questioning.
Mickey's wife, Cynthia, and their 3 adult children are still missing.
Could Jackie have something to do with it?
Detectives know from reviewing Mickey's text messages that he was on a date with Jackie just hours before he was killed. But according to Mickey's father, Mickey and his wife Cynthia were planning on patching up their relationship.
Did Mickey go meet with Jackie that night to break things off with her?
All right, Ms. Caldwell, we need you to be honest with us.
This might be a classic case of a woman scorned.
But Jackie appears heartbroken by Mickey's death.
She seems genuinely upset that he's gone.
Detectives ask Jackie about the texts they found on Mickey's phone, and she readily admits that they were involved in a romantic relationship.
It's true. I was with him Friday night. We had dinner together.
The last time she saw him was at dinner on March 9th.
Jackie, did something happen that night? Did y'all get into a fight?
Absolutely not.
So there was no mention of a breakup?
Not at all. Him and his wife were the ones breaking up, not us. We were in love.
She told the officers that she loved him, that he was not breaking up with her, but that they were actually planning to go away together after Mickey's divorce.
Jackie says that Mickey was dead set on them being together, that it was only a matter of him filing for divorce and leaving his wife.
It's why we got together for dinner, to celebrate the start of our new relationship. He was finally leaving his wife.
And you have no idea where she is now?
No.
But is Jackie telling the truth?
It became a who's who in this situation, and they had to do some more investigating to determine what really happened.
In their search for answers, investigators turned to Mickey's inner circle of friends.
During the course of their investigation, investigators interviewed one of Mickey's best friends and co-workers named Lamar Banks.
He tells police that he and Mickey have been friends for years. They even worked together in construction.
Sit there, so we talk every day, talk all the time.
Because they were so close, Mickey confided in him a number of things that he had not disclosed to anyone else.
He really was in love with Jackie and wanted to divorce Cynthia to start a life with her. According to Lamar, the situation with Cynthia was far worse than anyone realized, even Mickey's close family members.
That's crazy. Just something about her just wasn't right. And she been a terror for the last past 30 years, man, that I've known her.
He witnessed a toxic relationship of constant arguing and a lot of physical assaults that took place where Cynthia was assaulting Mickey.
She swapped everything.
But he had no idea how bad it was until one day when he was dropping off Mickey at home.
Thanks for the ride, man. I appreciate it.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Right, we'll get with you.
All right.
Took him home, and we pulled in the driveway. I'm sitting my phone, so I'm there. There's somebody come out the corner, y'all.
It was Cynthia, and she had a knife.
Mickey trying to go in the front door, and she come around the side, on the other side of the garage, and she had a butcher knife. I stand out, look, I say, Mickey, blowing the horns at Mickey. I said, here she come.
Hey, Mickey!
Texas detectives are speaking with Lamar Banks, the best friend of murder victim Eric Mickey Willis.
Lamar said Mickey's relationship with his wife Cynthia had become more and more violent, and Cynthia even came at him with a knife.
Blowing the horns at Mickey. I said, here she come.
Hey, Mickey!
But it was too late.
When he turned around, man, she hit him. She hit him with that knife in his arm or his shoulder. He said that damn blade come out at the back of him.
So Cynthia stabbed him in the shoulder?
Oh, hell yeah, she done stabbed him, man. She done stabbed him, and man, hell yeah.
Lamar says he immediately tried to help his friend.
And I was reaching for my pistol in the console. I said, I'm gonna shoot that.
But Mickey told Lamar he didn't need his help.
He said, now. They grabbed him, and they go in the house. And they shut the door.
Mickey was a family man to his core, and he didn't want to do anything that would break up the family.
Mickey was a person that where his kids was more important to him than what Cynthia was doing to him. He was a family man, the way he was raised.
At that time, like, he didn't press charges or he didn't want her to go to jail or anything like that.
But once the couple's youngest son was nearing his high school graduation, Mickey was ready for a new life and a new relationship.
He said, this boy here finna get ready to finish school. And I'm done. I'm gone.
It was kind of one of the situations like, I'm just gonna stay with her till these kids get out of here and graduate and become adults, and then I'll plan my escape.
Never known her to own a gun or anything, have you?
I don't know what Mickey was shot with, but that's what she keep on the gun. Keep that right in her teeth or her purse.
It's a shocking revelation about the esteemed mental health counselor.
With every new discovery, Cynthia looks more and more capable of committing murder, and police are becoming more and more concerned about the welfare of the children.
So they're looking at this and seeing like, okay, there is the capacity that she could also harm her own children. So time is of the essence, and they were really trying hard to find not only Cynthia, but the children.
But they still have no idea where they could be found.
However, when they subpoena Cynthia's cell phone records, investigators finally get a lead on her whereabouts.
So using the GPS information from the cell phones, detectives were able to track down the night of the murder. Cynthia left that home and traveled to a hotel in Spring, Texas.
Not long after, it's tracked to a home in Humble, Texas. That's about 30 miles from the Willis's residence.
Property records show that the home belongs to Cynthia's sister.
Investigators race to the home, fearing the worst, but instead, they're met with relief.
Can I help you?
The couple's 3 kids are safe and sound.
Is your mother Cynthia here?
No. Why?
Cynthia is nowhere to be found.
Everyone in the home is clearly worried and confused, including Cynthia's sister.
When Cynthia asked to stay with her for a while, she didn't think much of it.
The entire time they've been here, it has been very normal. Very normal.
Did you talk to your sister about what's going on? Where's Eric?
We're not. I assume either they were again separated and left again, and I didn't ask questions. We're not super close.
Cynthia's sister says she was at the house last night, but no one has seen or heard from her since.
And I have not talked to Cynthia.
When detectives reveal that Mickey is now dead, the family members are stunned.
This is the first I'm hearing about my dad being gone.
Mickey's daughter says the last time she saw him was March 9th, after he was home from his date with Jackie.
My dad got home probably about 12:30, a little after midnight. It was a normal night. My dad came in, he was tired.
You still up?
Yeah, you know how us night owls do.
I talked to him for a little bit, and then he went to his room, we went to sleep.
Good night, sweetheart.
All right, Dad.
Love you.
I love you too.
But early the next morning, her mother seemed panicked.
My mom woke us up Saturday morning and said we were leaving. I don't remember what time, maybe 7, but it was early. She woke us up.
Wake up. Wake up now. We gotta go. What's going on? I'll explain to you later. Come on, we gotta go. We gotta go. Come on.
She didn't give them any options of taking clothing or toothbrushes or anything like that. She rushed them all out of the house and they left.
They just assumed their parents had gotten into another fight, and that's why they were leaving the house.
They argue a lot. I mean, I guess it was getting worse, but we didn't really pay that no mind. It was just our new normal.
What happened then?
She said we were going to her mom's house. And then we've been here ever since. My mom said we couldn't go back home.
But the siblings say that on the night of the murder, none of them heard a gunshot go off.
And you didn't hear any scuffling, you didn't hear any noise?
I didn't.
Between the time you went to bed and she woke you up?
I didn't hear loud. I didn't really hear anything.
Could Cynthia have used the television in the bedroom to drown out any noise?
When the officers got there, the television was on and it was turned up loud. It was true crime stories that were on the TV at the time Mickey was killed. And so you start to wonder, was she trying to acclimate the environment, those others who were in the home, to the sounds of gunshots? Was that part of her plan? And it seems like it was.
Cynthia's youngest son, 17-year-old Eric Jr., echoes his sister's claims.
So he talks about how, everything seemed normal the night before. The next morning, the mother rushes them out of the home.
But he adds another crucial piece of information.
According to Eric, the day after they moved into his aunt's house, his mom made a chilling statement.
She said something really messed up, man.
What did she say?
She said that she heard him real bad.
She said it was out of self-defense, that Mickey tried to hurt her and she was only protecting herself.
He never thought his mom had hurt his dad so bad that she killed him.
I mean, they fight all the time. I just thought it was another fight.
But now Eric Jr. feels confident that his mom is a killer, and his siblings agree.
She killed him. She killed our dad.
Whenever a child gives up that kind of information that implicates one of their own parents in a murder, that's something you have to take seriously.
All three of Cynthia's children agreed to cooperate with the investigation and gave detailed statements.
They've got what they need to put together a murder case on Cynthia.
But they still have to find her.
For Mickey's loved ones, the waiting game is hard to stomach.
I was just pissed. I was livid. I was angry. And it's just like, why can't y'all find this lady? Because where is she and when is she going to jail? I was very, very upset because why are you hiding now?
Finally, on March 24th, police get the tip they've been waiting for.
They get a tip that Cynthia may be at an apartment complex down close to Pearland, Texas, which is further south of downtown.
And fortunately for investigators, the tip pays off.
They pull her over during a traffic stop and they arrest her.
She's taken in without incident.
From there, she's transported to Harris County for an interview with detectives.
When investigators take her in for questioning, what's interesting about this whole dynamic is she is mum. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't admit to anything, confess, but she also doesn't deny.
Instead, after she's read her Miranda rights, she asks for an attorney.
Even without a confession, investigators have what they need to charge Cynthia with first-degree murder.
Cynthia's 3 kids all agreed to testify against their mother in court. That alone was a huge win for prosecutors.
But a tragic twist of fate will turn the case on its head.
Eric Jr. was shot to death in a similar fashion to his father.
He had been murdered 2 weeks before his dad's case went to trial.
Investigators preparing for the murder trial of 48-year-old Cynthia Willis have just learned that one of their key witnesses has been killed.
Eric Jr. was shot to death in a similar fashion to his father.
He had been murdered 2 weeks before his dad's case went to trial.
Everyone's first thought was, did Cynthia have something to do with this?
We were all like, she killed him. Like, that was the first thought, because we knew that he was a key witness.
However, that theory is soon discounted.
It turned out Eric was senselessly killed by a fellow classmate he did not get along with. The young man was sentenced to 50 years in prison.
It's unfortunate that little Eric passed, but he was saved from that trauma of having to testify and in some way.
In August of 2021, nearly 3.5 years after Mickey's death, Cynthia goes on trial for murder.
Based on Cynthia and Mickey's prior domestic violence incidents, prosecutors outline a violent and abusive relationship.
They painted a picture of a very narcissistic person, a controlling person, and a bully.
Over the prior 2 decades, Cynthia proved herself capable of rage and violence time and time again.
She abused him throughout the relationship. She committed an aggravated assault on Mickey by stabbing him in the shoulder. That showed her propensity for violence.
Prosecutors contend that on the day Mickey Willis was murdered, Cynthia's rage finally reached its peak.
They had text messages that proved Cynthia knew Mickey was planning to divorce her and start a new relationship with Jackie.
The most dangerous time for a victim of domestic abuse is when they're trying to leave the relationship.
Her violence and her rage and her anger could not handle the idea of Mickey having the nerve to leave her. She felt like if she couldn't have him, then no one else could.
On the evening of March 9th, Cynthia decided to put her plan into action.
So I don't believe that Cynthia snapped. I believe that she thought about this for some time.
This was diabolical. This was premeditated.
She turned up the TV to mask the sound of the gunshot.
Cynthia pulled out the gun and shot him in the back of the head. So he had no idea what was happening.
He didn't have a chance to say goodbye to anybody. And she killed him in a space where you're supposed to feel the most safe, in your bed in your room.
That morning, when the reality of what she'd done began to sink in, Cynthia started to panic.
And that's why she rushed the kids out of the home, didn't really have a game plan. The kids didn't even have clothes or belongings. And it speaks to just how messy the whole situation was.
Prosecutors lay out a convincing argument. However, a shocking curveball threatens to derail the entire case.
Before trial, the couple's daughter gave prosecutors a sworn statement regarding her mother's violent past and the abuse that occurred.
And so we hoped that she would be cooperative on the stand. But then when she took the stand, it was the complete opposite. She started saying, I don't remember, I don't recall, I didn't say that.
We would ask her a question. She would answer it in a way that she apparently thought was favorable to her mother. And I remember points during her testimony when I was fighting back tears in my eyes because you could see a daughter who is trying to stand up for her mother, who is staring daggers at her from counsel table where she's seated.
Prosecutors call out the inconsistencies during cross-examination.
We already had a prior sworn statement from her in our back pocket, and so when she would deny making that prior sworn statement, the statement would come into evidence.
The jury knew. The jury knew she was lying.
And looking back on it now, I realized that that was the day that we won the case.
After a week-long trial, jurors returned with a verdict. They find Cynthia guilty of the murder of her husband.
I remember when they said guilty, Stephanie was sitting next to me, I just grabbed her hand and I started crying. I mean, I hadn't cried many times through that proceeding, and I cried then because we made it.
Watching the trial, I was relieved because a lot of people in these type of situations always have a little bit more sympathy for the woman.
During sentencing, Cynthia continues to profess her innocence.
She took absolutely no responsibility. When she finally had her opportunity to speak on her own behalf, she wanted to try to throw Mickey under the bus.
She said, I was the victim, that Mickey had cheated on her throughout their marriage. She talked about how he hung out with very suspicious people. And so she was just continuing to kind of dog his character and really speak down on him.
Regardless, the jury has little sympathy for the former mental health counselor.
The jury sentenced her to 50 years in prison.
A 50-year sentence for Cynthia means that she will not be eligible for parole until August of 2047. And at that time, she'll be 77 years old. So this pretty much is a life sentence.
Was it enough to say, you know, I feel completely satisfied? No, but, you know, it would do for now.
This was a case, obviously, of domestic violence that got out of hand. There's no question that Cynthia had been physically abusing Mickey all those years.
I mean, this is someone whose job was counseling others about their mental health, and then she turned around and killed her husband. It really shows that this can happen to anybody.
For men, I know it's difficult to admit that you're getting abused, but it's okay. Just because she's a woman doesn't mean it's okay for her to be verbally abusive or physically abusive. So my advice is get out while you can, because it's not gonna get any better.
My dad just was a very loving, caring, giving person. And had it been what my daddy would have wanted, we all would have been a big, happy family. So we cremated him. Everybody's got a little mini urn. Everybody's got a necklace or a bracelet. So he's actually truly getting to spend the amount of time he wants with all his family as much as he wants to. He's everywhere with everybody.
Abuse is never okay. If you or someone you love is in an abusive relationship, there is help available. Call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE.
South Central Los Angeles, a land of contrasting colors, cultures, and communities where palm trees sway against a backdrop of Hollywood hills, sunset skies, and bright city lights.
Most people think LA, they're gonna think of the beaches. They're gonna think of pretty women. They're gonna think of Hollywood.
LA is LA. You don't hear people talking about, oh, I'm going to California to go to the Valley, or I'm going to Palmdale or San Diego. No, when you come to California, you're going to LA.
Yet south of the Sunset Strip, in the central part and neighborhoods of Los Angeles, reflects a darker, more sinister reality. And in the spring of 2019, on the corner of Crenshaw and Slauson,
Dallas, Texas, is one of the most important economic and cultural centers in the state. Its history and traditions run deep, and perhaps the most important tradition in Texas is Friday night high school football. In the late 1980s, one team rose above all the rest, but it was their inexplicable and shocking fall from grace that would ultimately become their legacy. Dallas was one of the first Texan towns built in the wake of independence. The advent of the railroad quickly made it a key business and trading center. Today, the Dallas-Fort Worth area is home to nearly 7.5 million people.
Dallas is at the forefront of everything. It's an attractive space for businesses. There's lots of employment opportunities that you can't find elsewhere. It's a booming city.
The African American community, we have about 14% of the total population of the state of Texas. We have African American judges. We have a African American mayor, city manager, chief of police, fire chief, district attorney. And so from that standpoint, we have input into the decision-making process of this county.
Texans, they're born here, they're raised here, they're educated here, and they stay here. But it also has a lot of space for transplants like myself to come in and carve out a space for ourselves and do the work. Lots of opportunity.
It's just here for a lifetime.
And those who grew up in Oak Cliff in 1988 had a lot to cheer about because their team was the Dallas Carter Cowboys.
One of the best football teams to ever play in the state of Texas. Had, I think, 6, 7 players from that team, from that squad, to actually go to the NFL. With our leader being Jesse Armstead, of course.
As I grew up, more than anything, your dream was to play for Carter High School more so than it was to play in the NFL. You wanted to play for Carter because of their history of doing well.
Let me just put it to you in this context. There was no high school football team in America badder than these little cats.
In fact, the team and the school had become one of the reasons many black families chose to move there.
It was a big deal to live in Oak Cliff. If you were African American, you would move into those neighborhoods just for the sole reason to say, I live in Oak Cliff.
When I first started as head coach, every year the athletes want to be at Carter because we winning. The parents want the kids to be over there because I helped them get scholarship.
Not only did the players get to experience the winning tradition, they also got to play alongside other talented athletes.
When I got to Carter and I seen, Jesse, and then you got Derek Evans, all said, you got Lise Masters, they were confident in who they were. Just winners, great attitude, great men. It was just awesome being a part of that.
They want to be the best, and they were the best. They're the best in the whole metroplex of Dallas, and probably over the state of Texas. They had one of the greatest defense ever lived.
The defense called themselves the 11-man posse, and they were more than just teammates. They were best friends.
It was a brotherhood, you know, and we had each other back, and we protected everybody. It was awesome to know that everybody is going to do what they're supposed to do as far as their position is concerned, and that's why we were so good, you know, because we believed in one another, we trusted one another, and everybody, you know, had their assignment, and we executed.
For Dallas Carter, winning the state championship was the goal every year. So far, the team had fallen short, but during the 1988 season, they became the odds-on favorite.
I was a receiver. I was a junior that year. The Dallas Cowboys came to our pep rally. Around the neighborhoods, they treated us like celebrities.
It spoke volumes about these boys' ability to come together and form a cohesive, truly the epitome of what team means, both on and off the field.
Not everyone was rooting for them, however.
Sometimes one of the hardest things for an all-black team is not just winning, but it's overcoming racism and prejudice.
Desegregation was already alive and well, but I think the black versus white was still there in Dallas. Racial tensions, were high anyway in that pocket.
1982, I became head coach at Carter High School. When I first went there, it was about 95% white. And before I left, we were predominantly black.
Dallas schools were integrated in the early 1970s. But as black students and their families moved in, white families moved out, due to the prejudice that property values would drop and the level of crime would rise.
We started having that white flight, they call it. Every day we saw a U-Haul truck past the practice field. And the guy said, somebody must move next door to them. See, they didn't want to be next door to no black. The whites did.
Around 1987, the high school athletic conference was realigned, and for the first time, urban and suburban schools were competing.
The Dallas Independent School District schools, they wouldn't be playing the schools in the suburbs. They were predominantly Anglo. And so when the realignment took place, needless to say, there were a lot of people that were upset about having to play urban schools.
So these kids, now they're reaching out, to other corners of the state and beating the heck out of these teams.
For many of the players, this would be their last chance to take home the state title. And to do it, they'd have to beat the nearby powerhouse, Odessa Permian.
They were the team to beat. And you didn't just beat the team, you beat the whole damn town, because the whole town was behind those boys at Odessa Permian. When you talk in terms of football in some of the suburban areas, it's all they had. They breathed football. And if you were having a big game in those suburban communities, that's where the town made its money, because people would come in from out of town and, they would stay at the hotel in the neighborhood. They would eat at the restaurant.
Everybody was afraid to play Odessa. And I said, why I'm afraid to play Odessa? I play anybody. Now, I had attention of kids. They'll run through that wall if I tell them to. They had lots of guts, lots of determination, a whole lot of fight in themselves. Because I always taught, and I taught my son this, if you start something, be finished. You finish it.
But no one could have predicted how it would all play out. On December 22nd, 1988, Dallas police respond to an armed identified. It will tear an entire community apart. The residents of Oak Cliff, Texas, take a lot of pride in their community. Since the 1980s, this predominantly black neighborhood has worked hard to become one of the more affluent in the city.
We had a burgeoning middle class of African Americans. They had pretty good jobs making pretty good money. And you could see that as a result of some of the material things that they had, types of cars, how they kept their homes.
We had lawyers, doctors, We had lots of teachers. We had guys that is on the police force finished from Carter High School.
That area was respected as being hardworking and law-abiding citizens. A lot of the Dallas Cowboys were living in that area.
One of Oak Cliff's biggest success stories is Olympic champion Michael Johnson.
He was always that kid to mow lawns, to make ends meet and to help his family, to have him become not only a track star in his own, but to go to the Olympics to represent the entire country. He turned out to be a pride and joy of Dallas.
And the players for its high school football team, the Dallas Carter Cowboys, served as role models for many young men growing up in the area.
The star running back stayed 2 streets over. They're taking us, the younger generation in and exposing us to something that we had not seen. Every weekend, you either heard on the radio who scored the most touchdowns, or you see a player that you knew being spotlighted on News Extra. It's powerful because that's somebody who we could identify with and want to be like.
My mom was in jail at that time. My aunties stayed in the Carter district, so that's how I wound up going to Carter. Keith, Jimmy, Derek, everybody had a house, that their mom and dad were together. That was awesome for me, just to see that.
During their championship run in 1988, the Cowboys were more than just a team. They were celebrities with an entire city at their feet.
The talent at that time, it was off the chain. Just to be around great players, it just taught me how to be a winner.
Our attitudes was we couldn't be beat. I mean, even today, they still saying that that's one of, if not the best high school football team in the state of Texas.
Their parents gave them wonderful lives. They had nice clothes and nice shoes.
Smelled good, kept a clean cut, wore nice jewelry, had the Jordans on. You could have your choice of the women.
Which is why the events that took place over the following year came as such a shock to everyone. On December 22nd, 1988, the Oak Cliff community had just wrapped up its football season and were looking ahead to the holidays when a local fast food restaurant is robbed. 3 months later, there was a similar armed robbery, and then another the month after that.
You wouldn't have necessarily connected these crimes together, but witnesses were describing black men wearing face masks. Sometimes there was 2 robbers, sometimes there was more, but every time they were armed and would grab cash and take off.
By the summer of 1989, a total of 21 Dallas area restaurants and shops have been hit.
The amount of money being stolen ranged from a few $100s to as much as $11,000. The description of the thieves varied, and so did the type of guns that were used. It could mean that it was not the same crew of thieves, but several. One of the restaurants was Poncho's, and it was robbed twice. The second time, the night manager said that he was locking up when 3 black men with stockings on their face entered the restaurant. He said one was holding a gun and demanded that he clean out the safe. He said he was scared for his life.
Give investigators a detailed description of the getaway vehicle. It doesn't take long for Dallas police to find it.
It was very good description. The 2 front wheels and the 2 back wheels were different. So a couple of officers saw them and stopped them and found the gun and the money.
To their surprise, the officers immediately recognized both suspects, Derek Evans and Gary Edwards, both star players for the Dallas Carter Cowboys.
One of them was an All-American, and the other one was very, very good player. They both had already signed the letters of intent to go to colleges, and they were big stars.
People didn't want to believe what was unfolding before their eyes. Here you had these kids who built the dynasty, and now all of a sudden, that's going to start crumbling down.
But why would 2 celebrated athletes risk their futures to commit armed robberies? And who else was involved?
What the age? Even when it's kids like these who have an entire community's hopes and dreams on their shoulders.
1988, and the team's controversial run for their first state championship. Going into the playoffs, the Dallas Carter Cowboys are ranked #1.
Carter's defense put fear in every other team in the league, especially with linebackers like Jesse Armstead and Derek Evans.
You had talent stacked up on top of talent.
Their success is due in part to the exceptional head coach, Freddie James.
Because he loved us, he was strict on us because he wanted us to make it. He wanted us to be successful. We looked to him as a leader because he was our leader, because he was the coach.
I had lots of fun, good atmosphere at Carter High School. You got to have a good relationship with the parents, the kids at the school. They got to give you respect, and they did respect me.
The players have become more than teammates. They're brothers.
We hung around each other. We ate at each other's house. We had each other back. We were going to protect one another.
Our coaches didn't have to tell us to practice. We would compete with each other. We would go at it, just man on man, one-on-one. I think really that's what made and what makes Carter what it is.
The prospect of an underdog, all-black team rising above and bringing home the state championship makes the Cowboys popular beyond the borders of their Oak Cliff community.
There's this team that's the underdog. They're African American. They come from a community, that didn't get a whole lot of respect. And they're still winning games. And then you start rooting for them. And so we're all sitting on the edge of our seats. We just want to know, did Carter win?
No school in the inner city in the history of Dallas, Texas has ever won state championship at the top Class A, ever.
But it also earns them some powerful enemies.
The football team at Carter suddenly started beating all the local football teams. And there were people in the stands that just weren't rooting for them. It had to be very difficult for these young black high school football players to work so hard and find themselves
who love, a winning team. That superintendent, under pressure from those parents, from the entire community, had to do something to make sure that the decision that he made, the final outcome, would be sound and would be satisfactory to everybody.
Under pressure from the entire community, the superintendent decides that Gary did in fact pass, which means the team is once again eligible to play. The Cowboys are back in the playoff. In the second half, Gary Edwards answers the call, scoring the touchdown that seals the victory for Dallas Carter. But off the field, the battle over the team's eligibility is just getting started.
The league office did not agree with the superintendent's decision and decided to take it to court.
A lot of it was legal maneuvering. Well, if you present it this way, it looks like he passed. But then somebody else would come back and say, well, if you present it this way, though, he didn't pass. So there was a lot of that going back and forth.
The adversity that they were going through was not only felt by them as the players, it was felt by the entire community.
The parents of Oak Cliff are determined to fight for their boys and show up to the hearings with their own lawyer.
We had to fight in the courtroom in order for the kids to continue to be able to play on the football field.
I was a nervous wreck, thinking about whether or not we're going to play the next ball game. I was nervous every day.
With only hours before the scheduled kickoff of this second round game, Dallas Carter still doesn't know whether they'll be allowed to play.
We got on the bus 3 times, and they called in and said, y'all get off the bus, y'all not eligible to play. We get off the bus and go back in the dressing room, kids carry clothes back. And then here come the school policeman, come up and said, Coach, you can get back on the bus.
It was, light switch on, light switch off. You're in, you're out. It was just tiresome.
The team lawyer immediately files an injunction, putting the game on hold. The case is referred to a state judge who will make the final determination. In the meantime, Dallas Carter remains in the
playoffs, and we'd fight them off left and right, week after week.
Following the game, public opinion swings in the Cowboys' favor. The timing of the allegations and the racial undertones involved makes them everyone's favorite underdogs.
They didn't stop playing. They were still beating everybody's pants off. Everywhere they played, they were pretty tough little cookies.
In the quarterfinals, the Cowboys narrowly defeat Marshall, setting up a showdown against one of the strongest East Texas football programs, Odessa Permian.
The kids were so riled up that there was talk about at least a half a day becoming a student holiday. Bragging rights were on the line. Carter had never, ever won a title game. This was a big deal.
The game truly lived up to the hype. It was a knockdown, drag-out fight from start to finish.
Dallas Carter wins 14-9, but the question still remains, will they be allowed to play in the championship?
It came down to the state judge. He decided that the superintendent was the only one who could truly decide the validity of the grade.
The superintendent ruled that Gary Edwards passed, so that was the final verdict.
It was an order that reverberated around the entire state of Texas. And the kids were overjoyed.
We can just go on and play and not even worry about whether we was in or we was out. It was on, because now we focused. Now we can go and get this championship.
At noon on Saturday, December 17th, 1988, Dallas Carter meets Converse Judson in Texas Stadium to determine the state champion. This time, the outcome is never in doubt. Dallas Carter walks away with a 31-14 victory.
It was gorgeous. It was awesome feeling.
Means a lot. Makes everybody proud. There's a lot of celebrating going on.
After the ball game, I said, now you're the state champ. You're the best in Texas. Keep your head up high because everybody is on you. We are a happy group of people.
But their moment of triumph would only make their fall from grace that much harder to take. Fame can often change people, giving them an inflated sense of their own self-importance. It can even make them feel as though they're above the law.
You see some people these days who think that they can get away with anything, that no one's going to hold them accountable. Unfortunately, sometimes that's true. Whether they're rich enough to pay for the best lawyers or they've got friends in high places, they get treated differently, even if they've committed a serious crime. There have been a few cases recently that we saw famous people get off with a slap on the wrist, where you and I would go to prison. But those players at Dallas Carter just weren't going to be that lucky.
For the first time, the Dallas Carter Cowboys are the state champions, proving that this team and their neighborhood of Oak Cliff can never be underestimated again. Everywhere they go, the players are treated like royalty.
I kicked it when I got the Carter High. Baby, it was on. Everybody loves a winner.
We was considered like celebrities. Not only did they treat us like that, we expected it.
In the months following their historic victory, 21 Carter players are signed to full scholarships by college teams.
Derek Evans signed with Tennessee. And the big deal was that he did it, from his mama's hot tub, wearing the bling bling.
Some thought this was cocky, but some thought it was just part of his charm and his character.
They say cocky, I say confident. They just jealous because we was winning all the time.
They like to wear the jewelry and pretty shoes, and they were stylish type kids.
Some of the Carter High boys were living lavish lifestyles, and people in the community were beginning to wonder how. And on June 20th, 1989, a pair of arrests revealed the shocking truth. They were stealing it.
Some of the players had started committing some robberies 5 days after the championship.
Soon after the first arrest, more Carter High team members were charged in connection with the crime spree. 6 of the 10 suspects arrested played on the Carter High School football team. Gary Edwards, Derek Evans, Keith Campbell, Patrick P.K. Williams, Eric Andrews, and Carlos Allen.
They came and picked us up from our house. They had us on the news, so they showed our faces. And man, it was just like, dang, is this really happening?
Because they were stars in their own right and in their own minds in the community, I think the attitude was, well, we can do anything we want. We own this town. Negative influences started to creep in.
One of Carter's star football players, P.K. Williams, worked at a local fast food restaurant and saw an opportunity to make some quick money.
Not that we needed the gold chain, it was just lust of the eye that we wanted to have it. And that's when I came up with the plan on how we can afford this stuff.
Williams enlists the aid of his closest teammates, Carlos Allen and Keith Campbell.
I was like, you lost your damn mind. Either you're gonna die or you're going to prison. I knew initially my first answer was no. And after thinking about it, I said, all right. They wanted to have some money for Christmas.
On the night of the robbery, one of them let the others in the back door. And then they walked in with their faces covered, holding a gun, and robbed the cash register.
The heist is a success. No one ever suspects the beloved Carter High football players were involved.
So Saturday morning, the police came in, and my manager introduced me to them and said, this is one of the Carter High football. So we didn't even talk about what happened Friday night. They wanted to know where I was going to school.
Between the adrenaline rush and the $700 payout, the boys are hooked and plan to do it again.
At first, it was just 3 of us. Then we got more of our homeboys involved doing robberies. You had different groups.
But some players, like All-American Jesse Armstead, are unwilling to risk their futures.
He says, no, man, I don't roll like that. I'm not with you guys. Y'all do it on your own.
Jesse Armstead did not get involved because he had been caught shoplifting. And when he saw the hurt on his mother's face, he made the decision that he would never commit another crime. So when the Carter boys came to him and asked him to join, he declined. Jesse was headed to play college football for the Miami Hurricanes, and he actually ended up playing 12 years in the NFL.
Williams soon gets a new job at a Mexican restaurant, the perfect place for another robbery.
We had a couple of our homeboys to go in because we couldn't go in. We thought they would probably recognize us.
They staged a robbery with an employee who works at the restaurant to say, we're going to come in and we'll make it look like we are robbing you. When we stick them up, you just follow our lead, tell us how to get the money, and we'll get it.
This time, the group walks away with $6,000. After one more robbery, they decide to stop. The older the players get. Eventually, they don't even bother to cover their faces.
That's how emboldened they were to just walk in, brazen, and put a gun in somebody's face and say, hey, give me your money.
You point a pistol at somebody, they're going to open the cash register pretty quick. It represents the power that you have over the clerk, especially these Carter robberies. They weren't poor boys, but they got a kick out of these robberies.
Everyone treated them like that they could do no wrong. It's their city. And I know it's hard to believe, but they probably didn't even realize that they were hurting anybody.
It's all fun and games until they are caught. Now it's just a question of what their punishments will be. The arrest of 6 Carter High School football players make headlines all over Dallas. The athletes, along with 4 other area high school students, are charged with a total of 21 armed robberies.
There were some boys from Carter that weren't football players. And there were boys from Hillcrest High School. They had gone to school with the Carter boys in grade school. They all knew each other.
It's impossible to understand how these young men with such bright futures could choose to throw it all away.
This took my family by surprise. My grandmother had to pawn her ring to get me out.
It's like the community rose to cheer these kids. You know, the community flocked to its knees when all of this occurred. It took the wind out of our sails.
All of the teens involved enter guilty pleas. On September 22nd, 1989, they file into a packed Dallas courtroom for sentencing.
We were fearful, frightful, about, our future, because we didn't know the judge, never been in trouble.
Their lawyers thought at first offender, you're going to get probation or slap on the wrist.
The judge doesn't show any mercy.
You had witnesses, people who stood there and said, oh, I felt like I was going to die. There was a gun in my face.
I remember him addressing Gary first. It was like, y'all been getting breaks for a while. It ends right here. If stupidity were a crime, y'all deserve a life sentence.
Gary Edwards is sentenced to 16 years. Derek Evans receives 20 years.
The judge wanted to see some remorse. Didn't get a whole lot of that out of Campbell.
I remember him calling me a sociopath and that I scared him. He gave me 25 years.
Their ascension as citizen in this country.
But that isn't the end of the story for the Dallas Carter Cowboys. Following the convictions, the league once again appeals the superintendent's grade decision. And this time, they win.
The team got the word that, you know what? At the end of the day, you are ineligible. And so that title trophy that you got in 1988 does not count.
They took the state championship away from us, and that was a year later.
It's awarded instead to their opponent, Converse Judson. The rest of the team is devastated.
We took basically the punishment for what happened the year before.
You have, 60 plus players on a team. To be a member of that team.
Massachusetts is home to some of the most prestigious academic institutions in the country, including MIT, Radcliffe, and Harvard University. But the city's elite reputation also comes with a dark side. In 2009, the murder of a young man within Harvard's hallowed halls tarnishes the university's squeaky clean image. And as the investigation exposes deep problems permeating its esteemed campus, a mother launches a desperate fight to clear her son's name. Cambridge's history as a center of academic excellence began in the 1600s, when Harvard was formed by the Massachusetts Bay Colony to train men for the ministry and public leadership.
Many of the presidents of the United States, many of the members of Congress, whether in the Senate or in the House, have been graduates.
As Harvard grew, so did Cambridge. After the Civil War, former slaves arrived to begin new lives, along with immigrants from the Caribbean, Europe, Canada, and Russia.
Cambridge was a draw because there were jobs. Many of the institutions, they were looking for immigrants to work in certain areas, such as housekeeping. Some of the hospitals were looking for workers and so forth.
Cambridge is known as the melting pot because you have a blend of all different nationalities here. There were Black people, white people, Spanish people, and people of Asian persuasion.
For many people looking for a better life in Cambridge, Harvard offered hope that they or their children might one day even become esteemed graduates themselves.
It is part of the lure why immigrants want to get to Harvard, even refugees. If I can get to America, maybe I can go to Harvard one day. That has been the lure. It's just the aura that Harvard has.
But with an acceptance rate of only 3% and a student body that is only 15% African American, those dreams are all but out of reach for most folks living in Cambridge's minority communities.
Well, you would expect, with all these higher education institutions of such prominence, that you would see more of an evidence of mobility for a lot of black and brown people because of those things. And you really don't get that kind of feeling here.
We live right next to Harvard, and they're not going to accept none of us to get into Harvard. I don't know anybody that ever attended the school Harvard.
But even if most people in Cambridge will never actually attend Harvard, his presence is still an inescapable part of everyday life.
Cambridge is synonymous with Harvard, and Harvard is synonymous with Cambridge.
So much so that Harvard Yard is just another de facto neighborhood in the city.
Nobody thinks that lives here be worried about, oh, I shouldn't go across the grounds. There's nothing there to say no trespassing or no walking through. It's just like you walk through your neighborhood anywhere.
But in 2009, one young man who had grown up in the shadow of Harvard would walk onto its campus one last time. And what happened to him that day would thrust Harvard onto the national stage for all the wrong reasons. It's late afternoon on May 18th, just days before graduation, when Cambridge police are dispatched to an incident on Harvard's campus. The lead detective who responded to the scene is in silhouette to protect his identity.
It was a nice day. I remember it was a little cool. It was still sunny at that time. It was light out, clear.
Students had been enjoying the usual peace and quiet on campus when a young man had suddenly burst out of a dorm called Kirkland House, staggering and gravely wounded.
He ran down towards Mount Auburn Street, stopped there. He had told somebody he had been shot and asked somebody to call 911, and that's where he collapsed on the sidewalk.
Cambridge police arrive within minutes to find the victim bleeding on the sidewalk. He's quickly identified as 21-year-old Justin Cosby.
He was still conscious when they got there. Professional ambulance was on scene, and they were treating the victim. They said that the bullet ricocheted off his hip or his pelvis.
As Justin is rushed to the hospital, detectives begin searching for answers. One immediate question was, how could something like this happen at such a prestigious university?
It was beyond belief that it would happen there. The shooting, a crime like this.
For those who know Justin, it's even more unbelievable it could happen to him. Justin Cosby was born on June 13th, 1987, to single mother Denise Cosby.
Justin was my youngest child. He was my baby. He was born in Richmond, Virginia. When Justin was a year old, I decided that I wanted to make a change. So I asked my sister, could I come to Boston? I knew a couple of my other brothers had come before me and started their life here. So I thought that might be something that we might do.
But Denise was ultimately drawn to Cambridge 20 minutes away.
I come from a pretty large family, and we all went to college, and we all graduated. So when I started to bring my children up, I was looking for an area where they would have those opportunities. So when I was given the opportunity to move here, it was just a no-brainer.
They settled into a high-rise apartment called the 808, just minutes away from Harvard's campus.
I met Justin. It was literally like around first grade, just playing basketball at the YMCA. Anytime we played basketball, we on the same team. Whatever we doing, we did everything together. Come over his house, come over my house. It's instant since that day.
He was well-liked dude, very popular, but humble, And that's what made it so dope to be cool with him, because he was the man.
Not only was Justin popular amongst his friends, but he also excelled academically.
I guess it's kind of ingrained in you because you're around excellence. When you go to public school in Cambridge from the 3rd grade or even the 2nd grade, you're at the MIT Museum and, do debates in Harvard in the 6th grade.
But after high school, Justin didn't have the connections or the money to get into Harvard, so he enrolled in Salem State University, 20 miles away.
He was very interested in IT. He was also interested in owning his own businesses. He even talked to me about maybe I will have a used car lot and I can sell cars.
He was flourishing out there, as he should.
Justin's commute from Salem State to Cambridge never stood in the way of him visiting his mother every chance he got.
He didn't have any type of shame about being a mama's boy. I can remember him being around some of his friends and they would tease him. He's like, I don't have no problems with it. I'll see what the problem is. And he'd give me a big hug or a kiss.
But now, Justin's latest visit home has taken a tragic turn, and his bright future is hanging by a thread. In the wake of the shooting, investigators tried to gather information about what happened and why Justin was on Harvard's campus in the first place. But witnesses seem reluctant to answer questions.
There is like a park, I want to say, separating Lowell House from Kirkland House. And there were students there at the time. You know, they wouldn't say they were scared, you know, they're concerned or what they had heard. You know, did you hear a shot? Did you hear any noise? Did you hear anybody screaming? And, you know, these kids, they just keep walking.
Fortunately for detectives, a couple of good Samaritans were willing to help.
There were some witnesses that were outside who had seen the victim running and holding his stomach and saying he had been shot. And there were also a group of potential suspects that they described as medium to light skin, Black or Hispanic males. One of the witnesses described the varsity type jacket that one of the suspects was wearing.
Near the spot where Justin collapsed, they find a possible explanation for what the group was doing there.
There was a coat wrapped around a package, and there was 3 or 4 ounces of marijuana in a bush right next to where he was found. We thought that it was, we call it a drug rip. He was chased, and there were gunshots. So we thought maybe there was some sort of a robbery, drug deal gone bad.
That's what I think was especially shocking about this. It's not a place you would have expected it to happen.
Even more shocking is that it happened just steps away from Justin's beloved childhood home.
I can literally see this college out of my bedroom window, my living room window. I can see that is our view. Most people would die for this view. You know, everyone that comes say, oh, you have a beautiful view. Yeah, that beautiful view turned into the bad
deal on Harvard's campus. Given the location and sensitive nature of the crime, Harvard police immediately offer their assistance.
We were directed to the J entry, I believe, at Kirkland House. And as we were getting towards the area, we could see some blood droplets along the path that the victim had run. We just followed the traces of blood that were on the ground, and then we found what we believed was part of a crime scene.
Detectives traced the blood trail to an entrance of the Kirkland House dormitory. The question is, how Justin and his attackers got inside.
To get inside all of the Harvard buildings, you have to use a card key. You have to swipe it or insert it somewhere to get in there. The Harvard detectives started to follow up on that, and they used their IT people, and they started to look at the swipes that were used at that door within a couple hours before the incident.
Inside Kirkland House, detectives find even more evidence of the shooting.
There was what we thought was a bullet hole in one of the doors. There were 3 empty shell casings and 3 live rounds that were 9mm. On the stairs that went up from the basement of J entry towards the door.
That evening, Justin's mother, Denise Cosby, gets a call that changes her life forever.
I received a call from one of Justin's friends, Ruben. And Ruben said that he was at the police station and I needed to get to the hospital as soon as possible. I was met by a couple of police officers. And I can remember them saying there was a shooting this evening at Harvard and your son was shot. I couldn't even fathom what had gone on. You know, I'm like, are you serious? A shooting? My son had no enemies. They took me up to a room where my son he wasn't conscious, but he was breathing and he had been operated on. And I remember this doctor, and he said he was a surgeon, and he started talking to him, and he told me he had just operated on my son. He told me that he had been shot in the stomach. So I was like, okay, well, so he's gonna be okay, right? And he's like, I really can't promise that. And when he said that I think that's when my whole world went black.
Denise is soon joined by her sister Joyce, who helps her keep vigil over Justin throughout the night.
It wasn't looking good. I can remember looking at the monitors. As fast as they would give them blood, the monitors would rise and then they would drop. And it was just one of those things that I just tried to keep hope. But the more I looked at those monitors, I knew it was not good.
We started talking to him, making him all kind of promises. And I told him that if he fought to get well, or let him have my apartment. We just started bargaining with him to get him to fight.
Time was going by so fast and slow at the same time. I didn't know what was happening, but then they were saying that they couldn't stop the blood, and they used all the blood in the whole hospital.
At 3:30 a.m., nearly 12 hours after he was shot, Justin succumbs to his injuries.
I just remember when it flatlined, I had to leave the room. I just not could believe that my child, my son, my baby, had died. It was truly my worst nightmare. It's something no parent wants to have to live through.
My whole world, his whole family's where everything just flipped. We definitely couldn't imagine this happening inside of all people, Justin.
For Denise, there was little time to mourn. When she returns home to begin making arrangements for Justin's funeral, she finds investigators waiting to talk to her.
The police was at my house pretty quickly asking questions, and I had no idea. I'm like, what happened? Why would somebody shoot my son? And then you're gonna tell me over some marijuana? Really? No, this is not the way my child lived. He was not a street person. He was not one of these people that toted guns or weapons. That's why it was so confusing. My son was not involved in any of those activities.
So how does a kid like Justin wind up getting shot over a few ounces of marijuana in a Harvard dorm? Investigators have even more questions after they find out whose keycard was used to access the building.
The information came to us from Harvard University Police that the card, the ID card that's used to swipe in to get into locked buildings at Harvard was a card from Brittany Smith, who was a student at Harvard.
The fatal shooting of 21-year-old Justin Cosby sends shockwaves across the campus of Harvard University. But when reporters try to get information from administrators, they hit a wall of silence.
Some schools are very reactive and they'll come out and they'll have press conferences. But in Harvard, it's almost like they didn't want to acknowledge something bad happened on campus.
Justin's shooters appear to have gotten into Kirkland House using a keycard belonging to a senior named Brittany Smith. But Brittany doesn't live in that building. Her dorm, Lowell House, is 1 block away, which makes investigators wonder if she might be a victim as well.
She wasn't answering her phone. She wasn't answering the door. I think there may have been a light on, and we decided that it was in everybody's best interest to use the exigency standard, meaning that, there could be an emergency, and we wanted to make sure that she was okay. Somebody came with a key and allowed us in. There was nobody in there.
But something in Brittany's room catches their eye.
We had seen a jacket that we remember somebody describing. There was a varsity-type jacket that had dark color. Somebody had described one of the suspects wearing that. So we locked down that as a potential crime scene as well, and then got a search warrant to go in and search.
Police take the jacket for processing. While CSIs continue searching Brittany's room for more evidence, investigators begin canvassing the rest of the building. They come across an ex-roommate of Brittany's named Kit Carroll.
She told us that she was friends with Brittany. She told me that she hadn't seen her in a while, but that she had stored some things in her room under the bed. We asked her what that was, and she said, well, the boyfriend she has now is very jealous, and she had some things from other boyfriends, and he didn't like her having those in the room. And I remember specifically there being a stuffed animal. There was a picture frame that might have had a picture, and there might have been a card from an ex-boyfriend inside a plastic bag, almost like the clear plastic bags that you line a trash can with.
Among the keepsakes, police also find some alarming evidence.
We found a handgun, a loaded handgun, and 2 IDs that belonged to 2 male students from Yale University.
Kit says she had no idea there was a gun in the bag. She often keeps her door unlocked, and according to Kit, Brittany's boyfriend often stays with Brittany and uses her key card.
She knew that he primarily kept that with him at all times, and that Brittany could find other ways to get in and out of her dorm.
Kit cooperates fully with the investigation, texting Brittany to urge her to talk to detectives. Brittany agrees to meet with them the following day, but she offers little help when she does, especially when they ask about her boyfriend.
She did not want to cooperate with us. She didn't want to give us any information about who he was or what he was doing there, about whether or not anybody else was there at the room.
Brittany says she was at Kirkland House the afternoon of the shooting, visiting a friend and fellow Harvard classmate named Shaniqua Campbell. But when pressed for more details, Brittany becomes combative.
I do remember her being very loud and upset and not wanting to talk to us and yelling at us and telling us that we didn't know anything and she didn't know anything. At some point, she was calling us racists.
At Brittany's request, detectives move her questioning to the dean's office. Once there, Brittany temporarily changes her tune.
We were trying to make it as comfortable as possible for her, which is why we were doing it on her terms, because she wasn't agreeing to come into the police station. We figured if it was somewhere that was comfortable for her, she might be more apt to talk to us. We thought it was putting a little bit too much pressure on her to have a bunch of cops around, and so one person stayed there to ask her a couple of questions with the dean.
Brittany eventually admits the jacket in her closet does belong to her boyfriend, who she identifies as Jordan Coombs, but she's certain Jordan was wearing a hoodie on the day of the shooting. When she realizes she may have given too much information, Brittany quickly clams up.
She just decided she had had enough and said, "I want an attorney." I think at that point she knew that she was in trouble herself.
Brittany's refusal to cooperate is an unfortunate roadblock, but now detectives have another person of interest, her boyfriend, Jordan Coombs.
We went online and we used investigative tools like LEAPS. We call it an all-around check. You look for licenses, you look for border probation checks, you look for warrants. And we couldn't find anybody by that name in New York City or in Massachusetts. So we thought, this can't be right.
Denise Cosby prepares to say goodbye to her beloved son.
I had no time to mourn or grieve because I had a funeral to plan.
Hundreds of mourners show up for Justin's funeral at Boston's Concord Baptist Church.
He left a lot of smiles on a lot of people's face. He made a lot of people feel good when he was here. I could not even believe from what I had heard and was hearing from people that he had touched that many lives at his young age of 21.
After a second funeral service in his hometown of Richmond, Justin is laid to rest. The mood amongst Cambridge detectives is less somber as they get some good news from forensic tests on the gun found in Brittany Smith's belongings.
The ballistics showed that it was the same weapon that was used to kill Justin. Every time you find a little piece, it's just you're getting a little closer to getting a warrant and making an arrest.
The jacket from Brittany's closet also tests positive for gunpowder residue. Brittany told them it belongs to her boyfriend, Jordan Coombs. But strangely, no one with that name appears to exist in the system.
Oftentimes when you're an investigator and you're dealing with something like a robbery or a shooting or a homicide, I would say 99% of the time you're dealing with somebody who's been involved with law enforcement in the past. We couldn't find anybody by that name with a record, so we thought that was probably an alias.
Investigators do have the names of 2 other persons of interest, however. And based on the IDs found with the gun, they're students at Yale.
We reached out to the Yale guys on the phone to find out why their IDs would be under the bed of somebody. We didn't tell them exactly what happened, and one of them told us the story about getting robbed, and I believe he said they took our IDs and said, "We know who you are. If you call the police, we'll kill you."
According to the two students, they were victims of a setup.
They had been victims of a robbery that was set up as a drug deal. They were robbed by 2 or 3 black males, and it was very similar circumstances.
And the Yale students say the man behind it all was none other than Jordan Coombs. The two young men had met Jordan a year prior, along with his girlfriend Brittany and her friend Shaniqua Campbell. They had all bonded over their affinity for weed. The two men from Yale had made a deal to sell the trio 3 pounds of marijuana. But when the students showed up to make the sale, they were held up at gunpoint instead. And Brittany and Shaniqua were nowhere to be seen.
It happened in New York City on the rooftop of a building. And they were robbed by 2 or 3 black males. And it was very similar circumstances. We were able to put 2 and 2 together. It was definitely good information.
Police suspect that after the success of his first heist, Jordan decided to do it again, this time with Justin as the target.
It was evidence that we could use to show that there were prior bad acts if these were the same suspects, because it sure sounded like it was the same people. It was almost identical.
A bag of marijuana was found near Justin's body. And as detectives talked to more witnesses, they learned Justin had a low-key side hustle selling weed on Harvard's campus.
We spoke to some witnesses who had come across Justin Cosby and knew that he had delivered marijuana there before, or that had friends that had purchased marijuana from him. Everybody seemed to like the guy, and they had used him on different occasions, and he was very personable and expensive. They all said he was expensive. He had developed a client base by only selling marijuana at Harvard, apparently for a lot more money than you would get on the streets in Cambridge. So I thought that was pretty smart.
The university uses that information to further distance themselves from the crime.
Harvard's approach was to deal with damage control.
We have nothing to do with it. We have nothing to do with it because he shouldn't have been here. He's a drug dealer, blah, 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 blah.
I just feel like they were trying to cover their ass. They're trying to protect their image.
Reading news coverage and how they try to frame him as being a gangbanger, a gangster, using that racist, trope just really, really upset me a lot.
The university also takes swift action against Brittany Smith and her friend and classmate Shaniqua Campbell. Within days of Justin's shooting, both women are expelled from Harvard.
Brittany Smith and Shaniqua were just about to graduate from Harvard University. They were done. They had their last finals.
In an effort to clear her name, Brittany's friend Shaniqua comes forward and offers to tell police everything she knows.
She gave us a lot of information as it pertained to Brittany and her boyfriend.
And that boyfriend's name is quite different from the one Brittany gave them.
The alias was definitely Jordan Coombs, and the real name of the person that was using that name was Jabri Copney.
For Denise Cosby, the investigation into her son's death is overshadowed by the narrative that her son was a hardened criminal.
When coming in contact with the media, a lot of times she would say, even before beginning, my son was not a drug dealer, and I applaud that.
My son was the poorest weed dealer that I knew, if he was dealing weed. Even as things went on, the investigations went on, I can remember the DA telling me that, your son's probably sold enough weed to buy him and his girlfriend dinner. And that was about it.
Harvard and the media seem ready to move on from the story. But Justin's supporters are infuriated by the idea that he's a drug dealer who brought it up on himself.
They don't want to face the fact that that could have been your son there doing some stupid drug deal, hardly worth anyone's life and hardly worth the time.
Shaniqua Campbell is angry about the way the university has treated her as well. She is expelled even though she hasn't been charged with any crimes. With nothing left to lose, she sits down with Cambridge police to give her side of the story. During her interview, she reveals the true identity of Brittany's mysterious boyfriend, Jordan, whose real name is Jabri Copney.
Copney would often go to smoke with Shaniqua, and they'd get together at her dorm. So he was a frequent flyer going in and out of that building.
Detectives learned that Shaniqua and Jabri weren't just smoking recreationally. Jabri was trying to operate a small criminal enterprise out of Brittany's Lowell House dorm.
They were actually bringing drugs to the campus, having drugs delivered to Lowell House. So he was living there and having drugs delivered, and I assume distributing them. So he was like a drug dealer that was operating out of Lowell House, which, when you think about it, is shocking and disturbing.
And according to Shaniqua, that's how Justin became a target.
She knew that Cosby sold marijuana and was trying to see if he could get other stuff.
Shaniqua's confession appears to expose an underbelly that was alive and well within the hallowed halls of Harvard.
I think that Harvard students are like any other students. They engage in that sort of thing. They party, they have a good time, and they probably smoke pot. And that was kind of like an underbelly there that was exposed, and I don't think anybody liked that.
Shaniqua denies any involvement in the robberies, but says Copney told her about his plans during one of their hangouts. Investigators are skeptical, however.
I think the two of them came up with the plan probably while they were together smoking one night, which seems like it was something they did pretty regularly. She knew that she could set something up to rob this guy who was bringing marijuana into Harvard. And that's when Copney set up the transaction.
For now, Shaniqua manages to avoid any criminal charges, and the police hope they can use her to get to Copney. But he surprises everyone when he turns himself in.
Jabri Copney retained the services from a high-profile attorney who I know from past cases, and then they came into the police station to sit down and talk with us, and he was placed under arrest at that point.
According to Copney, the plan was never to kill Justin.
He employed two of his friends from home in New York City to come and meet him, to help him with the robbery and to bring a firearm. And the plan was just to rob him. I don't think there was ever any intention to shoot him.
His two accomplices were 23-year-old Jason Aquino and 19-year-old Blaine Jiggets, who went by the street name Fat Boy.
He wanted to have at least one other person there to have numbers on his side in case there was an incident. And then Aquino became involved because he supplied the firearm. I think the promise was to split the profit from that large amount of marijuana. If there was 3 pounds, you're talking about, what, 48 ounces times $500 an ounce? So substantial amount of money if they came away with that stuff.
But the plan quickly unraveled. Justin was only able to secure a small amount, not the 3 pounds they thought he was bringing. But the trio decided to take it anyway.
There was a tussle over the bag that he had that had the marijuana in it. He eventually pulled that away from them and ran up the stairs that went to the ground level at Kirkland House.
Copney claims Jiggets is the one who chased Justin and shot him. Investigators find Jiggets living with his family in New York City. It takes longer for them to track down Jason Aquino. Their hunt leads them all the way to Mount Vernon, New York. Eventually, they spot Aquino and some other friends coming out of a fast food restaurant.
We were dealing with people that we believed to be armed and dangerous who had killed somebody, so everybody had their guns out. They were immediately put up against the wall and patted down and handcuffed.
Copney, Jiggets, and Aquino are all charged with murder, while Shaniqua Campbell cuts a deal to avoid arrest.
She became a witness for the prosecution, and so she was immune from prosecution.
Brittany Smith isn't as lucky. Although, like Shaniqua, she initially had a non-prosecution agreement, Brittany broke the terms of that agreement after telling a grand jury she knew nothing about the murder weapon. Police later determined she had hidden the weapon in her bag, effectively negating her deal.
Brittany, she lied to the grand jury, said that she did not know anything about the gun when they found out that she actually handled the gun.
People make smart choices and say, I'm part of Harvard and I have a great future ahead of me, and she threw it all away for this young man. I cannot imagine a poorer choice.
Brittany Smith. But for Denise Cosby, it's only the first step toward justice. She attends every pretrial hearing to make sure her son is represented.
I wanted Blaine Jiggis. I wanted Jason Aquino. I wanted Brittany Smith, Shaniqua, and Jabri to know that Justin had somebody that loved him. You didn't just hurt or kill my son. You hurt a lot of people.
In the 2 years leading up to the trials, Blaine Jiggets and Jason Aquino make plea deals, agreeing to testify against Copney in exchange for lighter sentences. But like Brittany Smith, Aquino gets caught lying to a grand jury.
I remember he went in to testify, and then the DA coming out in the hallway because we were all kept outside. And he came out and said he just lied on the stand.
As a result, Aquino adds perjury to his list of charges. On April 6th, 2011, the trial for the group's ringleader, Jabri Copney, finally begins. Shaniqua Campbell, the state star witness, testifies that Copney planned to rob Justin by posing as a Harvard student.
He somehow tricked him into believing it would be a transaction with Harvard students who are normally decent people and not murderers and not armed, certainly.
When Jiggets takes the stand, he tells the jury he got the 9mm gun used in the shooting from Aquino.
They went to Brittany's room and the gun was taken out of the bag and maybe even handed around, so everybody in the room had seen the gun, and there was talk about what they were going to do.
Blaine Jiggers loaded the gun in Brittany's room. And then Jabri went out to scout a place to pull off the robbery. Then they used Brittany's phone to call Justin.
Copney claimed Jiggets was the one who fired the gun. But Jiggets says it was the other way around, that it was Copney who shot Justin.
Justin broke away from him and tried to run. And when he tried to run up the stairs, that's when they started shooting wildly.
There were 3 spent shell casings from a 9mm and 3 live rounds. And we were trying to put 2 and 2 together with the DA. And then it came to us, mostly from Hollywood, that young kids don't know how to use guns, and whenever you see them, they're holding it sideways, and they all think that they have to pull the slide back. Everyone wants to hear that. The gun didn't have a live bullet in the chamber, so we believe that he pulled the trigger and nothing happened. He pulls it back, lets it go, and now that chamber's a live round, which he shoots. I'm not sure which one of the 3 shots hit Justin Cosby, but one of them hit him.
The defense accuses the state's witnesses of lying to protect themselves. The prosecutors submit evidence of Copney's DNA on the murder weapon and gunshot residue on his jacket. The jury ultimately finds Copney guilty of murder.
Copney was sentenced to life without parole.
Jabri got just what he deserved. Had it not been for him and Brittany allowing him to live in her dorm room and do these things, they would have had no reason to be there. My son would be alive today.
Jason Aquino is sentenced to 20 years in prison. Blaine Jiggets gets 12. Brittany Smith is the last of the 4 to face a trial, but at the last minute, she decides to plead guilty instead.
We knew that they all went back to her room, that she was actually the one that hid the gun in her friend's room.
For her role in the crime, Brittany receives a 3-year sentence.
People tell me she deserved a lot more than she got. But my thing was to make sure that they all took some type of responsibility for what had happened to my son, none of it would bring my son back.
Many, including Denise, believe Harvard also bore some responsibility for Justin's death. So in 2012, she sued the university for negligence.
He was going to Kirkland House, which is a safe place, expecting to be dealing with students. The last thing he expected was to run into Jabri Copney, an imposter who was a violent and dangerous individual.
The lawsuit argues that the university allowed Copney to stay on campus for months using Brittany's key card.
Jabri Copney was living with his girlfriend, Brittany Smith, right in Lowell House. They broke their own rules. In fact, I quoted the rules in my complaint when I sued the university. If you stay for more than a night or two, you're not allowed to. You have to be kicked out. He should have been kicked out.
But for the breach of security, this probably would not have happened.
Denise loses the case, but not her dedication to her son.
She been holding it down and making sure that his name stays alive. So, we gonna make sure that too, for sure. Can't forget somebody like Carlos, you can't.
I cannot even think of Justin being deceased. I know he's physically gone, but his spirit is still here.
I want people to know who Justin really was. He wasn't just that little kid that got killed because he was trying to sell somebody some weed. He was a human being. He made a mistake by doing that. That punishment did not fit the crime. And I wanted people to know. I'm very proud of him. I'm very proud of Justin because he was a good person.
chơi trước anh đang ở kênh khác có yếu trong video trong cái kênh khác này đúng rồi thì cũng phải mất công up lên rồi đấy đúng không? Thế là anh vâng thế anh cho em một cái kênh nháp gì được không lại bưa một cái rồi nè vào email của em ấy email của em mà cũng được cái đăng lên có cái gì này nhiều quá không nó không bị chặn này cũng chặn này